Me will be akwaba eba Melodies TV so. It's here for and then akola ya wono kra no enim. Se ne bakra obelidi NDC. Omo abato a womo ebeto 2024 no eye Mahama and the okosro eba eye den okosro ebe kan fom ekosha asase ase oye den a eye Mahama ena obelidi. Now, aprobo social media ena many ekokobo article bi so a me hu ne se nkrofo bebre na e comment wo so ebi mu di atem ebi mu so support and all that. You see Dr. Duffuor ne special aid e de nkrata bi aba betu dwa wo say the reason why Mahama is the NDC's weakest link for 2024. Na say ofa eye Duffuor ofa Mahama na ofa eye Kojobunsu a wo mu nyina stand for 2024 about na you say Mahama na ono omu nyina no oye weak. Let's go and see why they are saying that. Is it that you see love blinds you? Is it that because the person works for Duffuor into love are blinded on and now the person just doesn't want to meet reality? Now see a member of the Dr. Duffuor campaign team, Lateef Apau Redu, has provided evidence to water down the assertion of the former president of Ghana, John Mahama, that he is the party's best option to win the election 2024. It just say, or the evidence about because what is saying can't say Mahama na the best option. Into the evidence about evidence no ebe water down sa analogy no. Now, I say according to him, what the available data shows is that Mahama is rather the weakest link of the National Democratic Congress going into the impending elections. Speaking in a radio interview in reaction to statements by the former president that he is the best candidate for the NDC, Lateef Redu sought to understand how it is that in the two previous elections that he led the NDC into, they recorded their worst ever numbers. I see, if we dig into it, Mahama became president in 2012 after the death of Atta Mills. He ran against Akufo-Addo and won. And then he went again in 2016. In fact, the 2012 election was Atta Mills' election, but he died. So it was the works of Atta Mills and sympathy votes that won him 2012. On his own in 2016, also against Akufo-Addo, after the election, the vote difference was 1 million, which had never happened in Ghana before. In 2020, they again won the election by 500,000 margin, and that had also never happened before. The second highest defeat the NDC has suffered was in the 2020 elections, with the first in 2016, all with the candidate President John Mahama. So if we are going into 2024 and you say the NPP government that has trashed you in two successive elections, you are the only one in the NDC they fear, we don't agree. This is also because in 2020, Ghanaians really wanted to give the nod to the NDC, he said. Now, I think I sort of get where Lateef is coming from, in the sense that now saying Mahama to a walk or no, Mahama Kwakwa can say he's the best. Now, the reason why he's standing and they say, Omo almost standing on the ticket of NDC ni nano, Omo nyadie, Inter no Mahama is standing and konya obi a wono so eyadie, and obeyadie for NDC. Nkono Mahama won't stand it. In terms of based on that, no, and I pay any data about what say Mahama is not the best. But you see, data now whatever no, there is an error with the data, and I'll show you where the error lies. I say Lateef Apau Redu further broke down what he believed makes the campaign by John Mahama a failed one, using the Central Region for instance as an example. He stressed that with the performance of the NDC in the Central Region in 2016 and 2020, it cannot be said with factual certainty that Mahama is their best bet for the crucial elections of 2024. But see, in 2020, John Mahama's slogan was that he was the surest bet, which is the same as he's saying today. Let's look at the Central Region for instance, because that's where we got our running mate from. In 2016, Also, when we lost the election, we won only 4 constituencies, presidential and parliamentary elections. Also, the NPP won 19 when we went into 2020. The NDC won 13 parliamentary seats in the central region, while the NPP won 10. But for presidential, Akufo-Addo retained the 19, with John Mahama retaining his 4, he added. He also described how, for instance, the available data has shown that, especially in the 2020 general elections, Ghanaians voted more for members of parliament candidates of the NDC than they did for the party's presidential candidates. Into a trade data, a trese about onim no. Nkrofo etoma NDC for parliamentarians no essing a year Mahama presidential. I mean Nkrofo mpe Mahama. Also, he said that it can only be a figment of John Mahama's imagination to still believe that he's the one to give NDC its anticipated victory in 2024 when the data works against him. Also, if you analyze it, in 118 constituencies around the country, our parliamentary candidates had more votes than John Dramani Mahama. A case in point is Muntaka's constituency of Asawase. Muntaka had over 61,000 votes, while Mahama had 47,000. If you go to Haruna Idrisu's constituency, Tamale South, the difference in votes for Haruna and Mahama in 2020 was over 12,199 votes. In 118 constituencies, Ghanaians were voting for our parliamentary candidate than our presidential candidate. The available data doesn't suggest that all that he has been saying are in his head just to make him feel good. Doesn't suggest that. And I'll say all that he's saying are in his head just to make him feel good. To me, he is rather our weakest point to winning, he explained. The NDC presidential primaries is slated for May 13. I mean, fair enough, he has come out with some data and all that to show, say, indeed, the war can say people don't want Mahama, NDC for Mahama, no, the entire workers are no. And you see, what I like about this thing, and they say, normal politicians, no, they will just talk without data. But Osha, there were no can. We provided data, what they say, in the data, no, baby, yatoma NDC for parliamentary, no, about presidential, no, Mahama didn't win by that margin. And so a lot of things. Now, that can account for a whole lot. That can account for a whole lot. It is part of the reason why the NDC believed, say, Abato no yeriemu. Because how is it that normally, no, obi to aba or to presidential, any parliamentary. Okay? So, once you go into it, and then you see, say, maybe in some constituencies, I say there's an anomaly in the sense that the parliamentary voting, no, it is higher than the presidential, or the presidential voting is somewhat higher than the parliamentary. And no, they can raise concerns and say, Dabi, not just say, Reagan, so. And so it is one of the reasons in Tiana NDC for all the constituencies are walking in Yama Obono. It was one of the reasons in Tiana NDC for Ebilivi say, Yiviemu. Because how is it that Mahama, a ban so no votes, no, and about presidential, no, the votes weren't really tallying with parliamentary. Because how many people and I want to a bar or better or to parliamentary per presidential want to, and or better or to presidential per parliamentary want to. It is very rare, and so it was one of the reasons. Now, where I see said the comparison, no, anomaly ne say Mahama wasn't comparing himself with Akufo-Addo. Now, in the 2024 elections, it is not Mahama and Akufo-Addo, and so if you are using the data. And you are using Mahama's data against Akufo-Addo's data, and you are saying because of that, and you're saying this, then why we mistake now? Why you know? Because there is a different candidate that will be coming from the MPP, and you don't know the data of that candidate coming. And so, if you are using Mahama and Akufo-Addo's data, and you want to judge, now what I say no hunti MPP ni no so ebi asa data nana or no so Akufo-Addo data nana obenya. How fair are you being? And Mahama's comparison in Tia Obabe responded. Mahama wasn't comparing himself with the MPP in the first place. He was talking about the NDC. It is how person will compare. You compare with also Unipanoni data be with Mahama and so data. And I don't know. Meaning say Unipano data against Mahama there. Say Dr. Duffuor will data against Mahama. Then you bring that data out. Then we see it's okay. Mahama and Dr. Duffuor a contested will be bimu. Or more contested will be bimu no. This was what happened. Dr. Kufuor BT Mahama, and Dr. Kufuor, Dr. Duffuor Yesi, Dr. Duffuor Yesi. What I say? So you compare that data, and we get to know. So okay, say yeah, Dr. Duffuor now Okasama no any Mahama dia, and the Dr. Duffuor no the Shama Mahama. But we will support Dr. Duffuor. Now we go use Ekufado data. Say Ekufado no, and the sending no. Now Dr. Duffuor no Ekufado ko jinawa. Dr. Duffuor be to me be Ekufado. And then the Dr. Duffuor any Ekufado eko ko jinawa. And some okay, Dr. Duffuor Uncle be to me be Ekufado. No. No. It's for one time your comment box, me that say.